From the Gateway Pundit, Black Lives Matter activist wearing Justice for Breonna Taylor's shirt walked into a Louisville bar and murdered 3 people. I have been digging into this story, trying to figure out who this guy was, why he did this, and was this political? And of course, I have no idea. I can't find anything. We don't know this man's motive. What we do know is this happened. Now, I'll say a few things. There's an image on the Gateway Pundit showing him wearing some kind of T-shirt. I don't know if that's a Breonna Taylor T-shirt. I've looked it up. I couldn't verify that. I've seen people sharing the image saying the same thing. I couldn't verify it. I have no idea where that image comes from. I have no idea if that image is even this guy. And it's been very, very difficult. So I've also noticed a couple other stories. There's another story in Philadelphia about a police cruiser that was torched. A couple people were arrested. And there seems to be a reluctance among the media to talk about what this is, who this guy was, why he did it, and why other people may be torching police vehicles. So I don't know what the guy's motive was. I don't know what any of their motives are. But I thought about it for a second and I said, if it was a white dude who walked into a restaurant and just shot 3 people, 2 black people and a white person, they would dig into this person's past. They would find out literally everything there is to know about him. And if there was anything in any way conservative, it would be the headline. I think about that dude who in Ohio went to the bar and he had a handgun with like a large magazine drum of like 100 rounds or something like that. And he shot a bunch of people. And they said he wasn't Antifa, even though he was literally Antifa, pro-Antifa all over the place. And so this bias seems really obvious. The media doesn't want to admit that there are extremists on the left taking certain actions. Now, I think we need to be careful, and that's why I want to do the segment. Look, I see this story, and my first reaction is, could this be a Black Lives Matter activist saying something like, it's time to go to war, and then going and targeting white people? Well, apparently one of the guys he killed was black. A lot of people are sharing the story saying that he walked in and killed 3 white people. I don't think that's the case. And the Gateway Pundit doesn't even say that either. One of the guys was black. In which case, was this just a guy who happened to be a Black Lives Matter activist and supporter of Breonna Taylor, who had other reasons for killing somebody? I mean, I'm not saying they're good reasons. I think killing people, it's wrong, period. So we don't know why this guy did this. And the same thing is true for what we saw with the arson along the West Coast. And, I'll mention a little bit about what happened with Joe Rogan, because this is important stuff as it pertains to us, as people in the media and people who share this content. If we don't know the motives, we have to be careful not to claim it. Otherwise, we are just engaging in escalation. So you may have seen Joe Rogan. On his podcast, he said something about they arrested he's like, you got these crazy people, I'm paraphrasing, setting fires and stuff like that. And he's like, you got these crazy people, they're setting these fires, and they even arrested some people, some leftist activists for actually setting these fires. Well, he got called out for it. And then in response to that, Joe did a correction where he said, I saw one thing where a guy set a fire somewhere else, and the other stuff wasn't true, making it seem like there's no arson at all. And therein lies the problem of trying to break down what this is and why it's happening. So the dude who got arrested with the Portland fire, but the Oregon fires, we don't know why he started the fire. We do know that one guy was a Black Lives Matter activist. Maybe that has nothing to do with him starting a fire. This guy right here who walked in and murdered 3 people, I'll tell you this. I've looked at some of the details. I've looked into who this guy is. Definitely a Black Lives Matter activist. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if he actually was wearing a Justice for Breonna Taylor t-shirt. His motive in killing 3 people, honestly, no idea. For all we know, that it wasn't a random act. For all we know, these dudes were, stealing from him, or these dudes were like neighbors across the street and they kept playing loud music and partying, all that. We have no idea. And we jump the gun. Everybody wants to make it political. And at the same time, like I mentioned with the Joe Rogan scenario, you go the other way and say, it's not political at all. You don't know this. Let me show you this story. And I'm trying to explain what I mean about just like, look, I'll tell you what's really frustrating is that I spent, it is tiring doing all of the digging and the verification and the fact checking. And look, I don't care if people want to say I'm not a journalist, but I tell you, I just put several hours into trying to figure out who this guy was and looking at his history. And I think it's fair to say this dude is a Black Lives Matter activist. He is, right? Here's the story from WDRB.com. Bungalow Joe's owner, in disbelief after 3 men killed in totally random shooting at restaurant. Totally random, they say. What are you talking about? You don't know this? It could be a targeted killing. Why are they including totally random? That's what makes it weird to me. We know the guy's a Black Lives Matter activist. The first thing they do is they run out, they wave their arms. It's random. It's random. What? Like, that's weird. It's like you're trying to make sure we don't think it was a targeted killing based on something to do with Black Lives Matter, which I'm not saying it was. They say this. Joe Bishop was still in disbelief the day after 3 customers were killed in a shooting at his restaurant, Bungalow Joe's Bar and Grill. Quote, I didn't think I'd be scrubbing blood off my patio on a Saturday morning, Bishop told WDRB News. I thought I was getting ready for everybody to watch the ball game. Bishop said he had just gone to sleep when he got a call around 11:15 p.m. Friday from one of his managers about a shooting at a restaurant. When he got to the scene, one of the victims had been rushed to the hospital, and 2 others were lying on the patio. According to Bishop, it was a normal Friday night at Bungalow Joe's when a man walked up to the restaurant and shot 3 customers, all men who were sitting in the patio area at point blank range. Nobody had ever seen this guy before, Bishop said, referring to the shooter. It was a totally random act. And just because this one guy who manages the business doesn't know what these guys' relationships was or were, it was a totally random act. Now, maybe these 3 guys who got shot didn't know each other. Sure. But here, look what he says. The men did not exchange words at any point in time before the shooting, according to Bishop. Quote, social media is full of people saying this happened and that happened and wanted to get political with it. There was nothing political about what happened, he added. How do you know? How do you know? I take you now to Philadelphia. 2 arrested for Philadelphia police car arson in West Philly. Police say not related to previous car fires. What was the motivation for people to light a police car on fire? I know we're just making assumptions. Maybe that one particular cop owed the guys money. I don't know. I think it's fair to say the motivation likely has to do with the 4 months or whatever or nonstop. And yeah, now we're on 4 months of anti-police rhetoric, demoralization, fighting, riots, unrest. So why would a man, a Black Lives Matter activist, walk up to a group of people sitting around and shoot them? There's a lot of reasons. In fact, there's an infinite amount of reasons. I could say he was joining a gang, and the gang said, "You gotta do this to get in the gang." Sometimes they do that. It was a random hit, and someone, let's say one of the guy's wives, was like, "I want you to take him out. You make sure you kill his other people, so it looks like it's random." Sure. Or he's a Black Lives Matter activist. He's been racialized, like his worldview has been he's been radicalized into a racialized worldview, and he went up. And he was targeting the white people. He ended up killing the black dude, too. I don't think that necessarily makes sense either. But I find it so weird that you have an immediate jumping of the gun from mainstream press saying, it's not political. Everybody stop. It's not. And then you have people on the right saying, like, look at this story. Look what this guy did. Trying to make it seem like we know for sure. I guess all I can say is there's 2 big problems I see here. There's the bias that everybody's going to try and assert, this proves what we've been saying all along. You need to look at this story, talk about this story. And I guess the other issue is the media wouldn't tell us even if they knew. Why is it that they pull up this quote where the guy immediately says, it's not political? Well, hold on, man. Hold on a second. If you just ran the story saying 3 people shot in random killing at restaurant in Louisville, that would be the end of it and no one would ask any questions. The only reason they're saying it's random and it's not political is because people have reason to believe it is, because this guy's a Black Lives Matter activist. So they're jumping on top to try and shut down any conversation before they've done any groundwork. I have been Googling. I have been pulling up my databases. I use several fact-checking and background-checking databases on individuals to figure out who they are. I think this guy is a Black Lives Matter activist. That's pretty obvious. And again, I don't know where that photo comes from, but it just strikes me as odd that they're going to immediately come out and say it's not political, because then you're going to get people believing it is. They say Louisville Metro police officers responded to the bar located on Buela Church Road around 11:30 p.m. 2 of the men who were shot Torian Jermaine Hudson, 26, and William Scott Smallwood, 48, were pronounced dead at the scene, according to the Jefferson County Coroner's Office. The other victim, Stephen Matthew Head, 24, died from his injuries at University Hospital. Michael E. Rines Jr., this is where it gets really weird. Check this out. Michael E. Rines Jr., 33, was arrested just after midnight Saturday after police found him crawling in brush near the restaurant, according to Rimes' arrest report. Police said Rimes' clothing matched the clothing of the suspect caught on video, and that he had a handgun loaded with several rounds that were manufactured by the same company that made the shell casings found at the scene. Rimes faces 3 counts of murder and is scheduled to be arraigned in court Monday. His bond was set at $2 million, according to the Louisville Metro Corrections online booking log. Why? Why, Bishop asked. I mean, I could understand if there's an altercation, but why? I don't know, and neither do you. Neither does anyone else. Why was this guy hiding in the bushes? You'd think he'd shoot him and run. His story is just weird. I tell you, man, it's probably as simple as a crazy guy did a crazy thing. You know, just because he happens to be a Black Lives Matter activist doesn't mean that motivated the killing. But I will say, I'm getting worried. I'm getting angry. I'm getting really angry at all of this. I will stress for the 50 millionth time before we move on to where we get to the important conversation that we don't know what his motive was. We don't. But I will tell you this, you irresponsible and psychotic people in media propping this stuff up, calling for more. I am sick and tired of hearing about people being killed. And I hope this wasn't a political killing of some sort. Because you got to understand, there are going to be people who are going to say something like, you killed 2 of ours, we killed 2 of yours, or something to that effect. Because I have seen the aftermath of this in front of my own home in New York City. Most of you know, I talked about it in several podcasts, several different episodes. I lived on that street where the 2 cops got assassinated. Burn Congress down. Former CNN host, prominent writers, and professor all urge a violent response if Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Supreme Court replacement is voted in before the election. CNN. Reza Aslan. This guy is one of the most despicable and evil people I have ever seen on the internet. I have ever seen in my life. And you know what? It's funny because I know a bunch of people know this guy. And I can't believe what has happened to people I have once considered my friends. But we are crossing the line, man. This kind of talk from people like him results in people losing their lives. This guy has called for violence. This guy is burn the entire thing down. I get it. It's vague. It's not specific enough. It could be figurative. Why do we allow this to exist in our society? 2 things. High-profile celebrities and personalities calling for violence, encouraging violence, and then a spineless media that won't do the groundwork to figure out why someone may have been motivated to commit some killing. You know, I can just see it. You get some right-wing guy, and they'll claim, you know, well, he was a right-wing guy, so it was clearly about his politics. Then you quite literally get this dude in Portland, this Michael Reinold guy who executed a Trump supporter. And where's the press? No, they just say, you know, oh yeah, well, I'll be honest. They had a hard time disavowing that or hiding from it. That was reality. But the media is absolutely works in defense of Black Lives Matter and leftist politics. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to stand out. And this allows, look at this guy. We're shutting the country down if Trump and McConnell try to ram through an appointee before the election. That's fine. We're going to shut it down. That's fine. He's not really saying anything. But the F no, burn it all down, the burn the country down, the threats of violence. If you can't shut it down, burn it down. And then you had, you know, Donald Trump being sent poison just the other day. There have been some crazy right-wing dudes, some really crazy far-right, whatever you want to call them, dudes. But I'm sick of this. I'm sick of it at this point. They say far right, but the far right has very little to do with Trump supporters and the regular right. Because you've got these people they call far right who quite literally support economic policy from Bernie Sanders. It's a game. It's a manipulation. They will tell you if it's right, it's bad. Therefore, Trump supporters are right, and so are all the other bad people. Therefore, all of the bad people are right-wing, period. Like they're the same thing. I've often talked about the problem with trying to break down what is far right and what is far left. And you know why you can't do it? Because the left, it's easy. When I say far left, you got people who are quite literally socialist and they're quite literally leftist identitarian. The SJWs all share their unified, stupid worldview. On the right, they don't. There is no the right. I don't even know how to describe the right. Is it Trump supporters? Is it never Trumper conservatives? Is it extremist ultranationalists who think the wife should be in the kitchen and they march around with guns? These things don't overlap. Traditional conservatives do not believe the same insane listen. You take any one of these people who went on a mass shooting spree. You're not going to find an agreement between them and Trump supporters. But you take these far leftists who are throwing bricks and you put them next to Ocasio-Cortez and they're going to agree on almost everything. So listen, man, that's the game they play in the media. So what's really frustrating to me here, I see this story about this guy and they don't tell us anything. They omit stuff. And I'm sitting here trying to understand why this happened. And what do they say? It's not political. It's just random. Ignore it. Ignore the fact that this guy's an activist. Ignore the fact that locals are calling him out saying he's wearing a shirt, Justice for Breonna Taylor. Did this guy maybe think he had found the cops who killed her? We don't know. And that could be extreme. For all I know, this dude saw those guys earlier in the day and they called him ugly. But the problem is we live in a world where the media doesn't do the fact checking. The journalists don't do the fact checking and they're not honest with us about what's really going on. Instead of actually telling us why this guy may be viewed as a political, why this may be viewed as a political act, they just say it's not political and we're not going to tell you anything else about this. We're not. A GoFundMe has been created to help cover the victims' funeral expenses outside Bungalow Joe's on Saturday. Members of the community created a memorial for the men who Bishop said worked together. One of the men was his manager's fiance. Smallwood was his dear friend. That's sad, man. Very first customer I had in the place, Bishop said of Smallwood. Well liked by everyone. Didn't have an enemy in the world. He was a regular. He was a fixture here. Every time you come up here, there was a good chance Scott was going to be there. In all his years in business, Bishop said he had to call the police to Bungalow Joe's just one time. He said the sign above the door best describes his restaurant, a family grill and pub. They're my family, he said. My customers, my employers, they're just all my family. So why did it happen? Why did this guy do it? I don't know. And I don't think we're going to know. Because if it turns out it really was some kind of deranged political motive, they're not going to tell us. The media will not report it, and they will withhold that. I've told the story about my time working for ABC News Univision. It was a company called Fusion, where they told me several times, side with the audience. That's what they told me. Remember, Tim, you got to side with the audience. And I said, what does that mean? They said, well, our audience is progressive, so, we're here to be on their side. And I asked, does that mean if there is a factual news report that would offend our audience, we won't report it? Yeah, I think that's fair. That's what I was told. And I was told this again in a room full of a ton of people as we were preparing to cover the conventions. Yeah, that's fair. You know what that means? It means the Proud Boys wave a little American flag. Oh, no, not in the Proud Boys. It means if a Trump supporter is walking down the street with a little flag, then some Antifa guy comes up to him and punches him in the face. Well, look, our audience is progressive. They like Antifa. If we report this, it'll make them angry. So what happens? When the Trump supporter gets up and shoves the guy to try and buy time to run away, they take a picture of him shoving it, and the headline changes. Trump supporter shoves anti-fascist. And that's it. Because you got to side with the audience. And so I look at stories like this with this guy, and what do I see? Black Lives Matter activists, we don't know why he did it. And when the media finds out, they might say, ooh, that's going to make a lot of people really angry. We shouldn't report this. We shouldn't report it. They probably won't. And then what'll happen? The Gateway Pundit will. Conservative outlets like the Daily Wire will. Daily Caller will. And regular people are going to say things like, the only way to actually know what's going on is to go to alternative media. And that is what is fueling, at least in part, this divide in our understanding of the world. Our worldviews are completely split. And it's because we know we can't get the truth from traditional mainstream press, because they will withhold things because they believe they're the arbiters of public knowledge and truth. I don't believe that. I believe the public has a right to know. And that means sometimes bad things for the public. It really does. Because some things are kept secret for their own protection, like government secrets and stuff. But sometimes public right to know trumps security, freedom over security. And that's one of the important issues. Look, I saw this story, man. I see a lot of people talking about it. That's not the biggest story in the world. I just hope two things. Okay. Be calm and reasonable when talking about this, because we don't know anything about it. And that's unfortunate. But I'll tell you this, if you go around saying he did it for political reasons, or you think he did, and then it turns out he did know the guys and they owed him, from stealing a bag of Cheetos or some stupid reason, then you're going to be wrong, and you can't jump the gun on this stuff. So I think I have my solution. I'm going to be hiring journalists. And then when I see a story, I'm going to be like, dig everything up. Let's figure out what this is all about. And then maybe we'll actually get a better understanding. But I'll tell you what, I did a ton of work. I got a headache. I've been digging and digging and digging. I can't verify half this stuff. A lot of phone calls got to be made to try and figure out what's going on. And I've come up with very little. I just wish the media would do a better job, and they wouldn't allow these people to call for violence. But I'll leave it there. Next segment will be coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel. Thank you all so much for hanging out, and I will see you all then.